want to talk to the women who hold everything together. The ones who show up, who handles things, who figures it out quietly, efficiently, without making a fuss. The one people describe as strong, as reliable, as capable, as the one who you can always count on. I want to talk to her today. Because behind that strength, there is often a story that nobody asked about. A story of a girl who had to grow up before she was ready, who learned to carry things before she knew what carrying cost, who became strong, not by choice, but by necessity. And today I want to ask the question that almost nobody asks her. Who takes care of you? This conversation is for you, all of you, including the parts you have never shown anyone. Welcome to She Is Her. This is a space where we have honest conversations about identity, healing, and the journey of becoming the woman God created you to be. And today's conversation sits very close to my heart because we are talking about the woman who grew up too early and the hidden cost of becoming strong before you were ready. For me, growing up happened very quickly. There was a loss early in my life, the kind that changes the shape of everything after it. And almost immediately, there were new environments, new people, new languages, new expectations, everything unfamiliar, all at once. And there simply wasn't space to stop and process any of it. Life kept moving, and I kept moving with it. I didn't fall apart, I didn't freeze, I adjusted. I adapted. I became strong. And for a long time, I thought that was something to be proud of. And in many ways, it is. But what I have come to understand is that strength and wholeness are not the same thing. And the journey from one to another is what today's conversation is all about. Being the strong one helped you survive. And there's nothing wrong with you for becoming her. You did what you needed to do with what you had. And at an age where you should not have had to. But survival was always meant to be a season, not a permanent address. And strength was never meant to be your only identity. It was meant to be one of the many things you carry, not the only thing that defines you. Today we are going to talk about what it takes to move from survival to wholeness. Let me describe the strong one to you. And I want you to notice whether you recognize yourself. She does not complain because somewhere along the way she learned that her feelings were either too much or simply not the priority right now. She figures things out on her own, not because she doesn't need help, but because asking for it never felt safe. Or perhaps it came with conditions, or it simply didn't come at all, and she stopped reaching. She adjusts in every environment. She reads the room, she makes herself useful, she becomes whatever the space needs her to be, and she carries things quietly because the alternative putting it down has always felt like failure. And from the outside, people see capability, they praise it, they rely on it, they come to expect it. But here's what chronic strength costs a woman: it costs her the permission to feel. When survival is the mode, emotions become a luxury. You learn to process quickly, push through, and get back to functioning. And over time, you stop processing at all. You just push. It costs her the experience of being held. When you are always the one holding others, you lose the language of what it feels like to be on the receiving end of care. And when someone offers it, it feels so unfamiliar, it almost feels unsafe. It costs her the ability to rest without guilt, because rest has never been neutral for the strong one. Rest has always felt like falling behind, like something is being left undone, like she's being irresponsible. And it costs her the knowledge of who she actually is when she's not being strong for someone, because she has worn the role for so long. She genuinely does not know who she is without it. I want to talk about something that the strong one often wears as a badge of honor, and that is independence. And I want to be careful here, because independence is not the problem. Healthy independence is a beautiful thing. But there's a version of independence that is not actually strength. It is a wound wearing the costume of strength. And it looks like this. She does not ask for help, even when she desperately needs it. Even when asking would make everything easier, she would rather exhaust herself than be in a position of needing someone. Because needing someone at some point in her past led to disappointment or burden. And she decided quietly, probably without realizing it, never again. She struggles to receive compliments, help, gifts, care. She deflects, she minimizes, she immediately reciprocates, so the balance of power is restored. Because being on the receiving end makes her feel vulnerable, and vulnerable does not feel safe. She keeps people at a managed distance, close enough to feel connected, but not close enough to truly need them. She has an inner circle that stays at arm's length, and she calls it, "I'm just a private person. I just value my space. I'm just selective about who I let in." And some of that may be true, but some of it is a wall built by a child who learned that letting people fully in eventually led to pain. She finds it almost impossible to be vulnerable with the people who love her most. She can be open in a general sense. She can share her story on a stage, but in the quiet, close, daily intimacy of real relationship, she disappears behind capability. Because being truly known is the most terrifying thing she can imagine. Over-independence is not a character flaw. It is a logical response to an environment where depending on others was never safe. But the environment has changed, and the strategy that kept you safe then is keeping you isolated now. Real strength is not needing no one. Real strength is knowing who you can trust and letting them in. I want to go somewhere that I think is readily talked about. How growing up too early affects the way you relate to God. Because your earliest experiences of care, protection, and provision shape the lens through which you see your Heavenly Father. And if those experiences were inconsistent, absent, or came with conditions, it is very difficult not to project that onto God. The woman who had to figure everything out alone as a child often approaches God the same way. She prays, but she also has a backup plan, a backup to the backup. Because waiting on God feels too much like the vulnerability of waiting on people who did not come through. The woman who had to be strong to survive often struggles to receive from God. She's more comfortable serving than being served, more comfortable giving than receiving, more comfortable doing than resting. And God says, "Come to me and I will give you rest." And she hears it. And she believes it for other people. But somewhere deep down, she wonders, does that actually apply to me? Am I allowed to just rest without earning it first? The woman who grew up managing everything often relates to God as a manager, not a daughter. She's faithful, disciplined, consistent, but there's a formality to her faith that keeps intimacy at a distance, because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the one thing she has never fully learned to offer. But here is what I want you to hear. God is not intimidated by your strength. He's not waiting for you to fall apart before he draws close. But he's inviting you into something deeper than a working relationship. He's inviting you into sonship, into daughterhood, into the kind of intimacy where you do not have to perform, manage, or hold it together. Where you can come exactly as you are, exhausted, uncertain, unfinished, and be fully received. That is not weakness. That is what you were always meant to have. So I want to pause here for a moment, because if you have stayed with this conversation thus far, I believe something in it is finding you. And I just want to acknowledge something. Being the strong one is exhausting. Not the kind of exhaustion that a good night's sleep fixes. The kind that lives underneath everything. The kind that you have learned to function through so seamlessly that sometimes even you forget is there. And I want to say to you directly, you do not have to keep going at this pace. You do not have to keep carrying this much. You are allowed to want more than survival. You are allowed to want rest. You are allowed to want to be known. This is not weakness. That is one of the most human things there is. I want to talk about what the journey forward actually looks like. Because I think many strong women are afraid that healing means becoming soft in a way that makes them vulnerable, that letting down that God means letting everything fall apart, that stopping means failing. But softening is not the same as weakness. Softening is what happens when a woman finally feels safe enough to put down what she has been carrying alone. Softening looks like caring without apologizing for it, not performing grief, not managing how much you show, just allowing yourself to feel without immediately moving to fix it. Softening looks like saying, I need help, and mean it, and receiving what is offered without immediately trying to repay it. Softening looks like rest that does not feel like failure, a Saturday that is genuinely restful, a moment of stillness that does not come loaded with guilt about everything left undone. Softening looks like letting people see the real version of you, not the managed version, not the capable version, the one who is figuring it out, the one who does not always have the answer, the one who is still becoming. And here is what I have discovered about softening. It does not make you weaker, it makes you more present, more available, more human, more able to connect deeply with the people around you, more able to receive from God, more able to lead from a place of wholeness rather than a place of survival. The strong woman who has softened is not less than she was. She's more fully herself than she has never, ever been. And that is not something to be afraid of. That is something to move towards. So what does it actually look like to begin putting down what you have been carrying? Because I think the strong one knows she's tired. She has known for a long time. What she does not always know is how. How do you put something down when you have been holding it for so long? You have forgotten what it feels like to have empty hands. Well, it starts by giving yourself permission not to be okay. Not performing okayness, not managing the presentation of yourself, just sitting honestly with, I am tired. I've been carrying this for a long time and I'm ready to set some of it down. That permission is not given to you by anyone else. You have to give it to yourself. It continues by getting honest about what you are actually carrying. Not just the practical responsibilities, but the emotional weight. The fear of what happens if you stop. The belief that your value is tied to your usefulness. The terror of being seen as someone who could not handle it. Name those things, even if only to yourself, because you cannot put down what you have not named. And then it requires letting someone in. Not everyone, not publicly, but someone. One person who is safe enough to hold your story without using it against you. One person who will not need you to be strong in order to stay. Finding that person or that community is one of the most healing things a strong woman can do. And finally, it is sustained by returning daily to the truth of who you are when you're not being strong for anyone. You are not your productivity. You are not your usefulness. You are not the sum of what you have carried. You are a woman who was formed with purpose, who deserves rest, who deserves care, who deserves to be known beyond her capability. And the more you return to that truth, the lighter the load becomes. Not because the responsibilities disappear, but because you are no longer carrying them alone. Before I close this conversation today, I want to ask you two things. And I want you to sit with them honestly. Where in your life did you have to grow up too early? And how is it that's still showing up in who you are today? You do not have to have the full answer right now. You do not have to have it figured out. Just be willing to look, because the woman you are becoming deserves to be built on truth, not just on survival, not just on strength, on the full, honest, healed truth of who you are. There's nothing wrong with you for becoming strong. You were responding to a life that asks too much of you too soon, and you rose to meet it. That took courage, even if it never felt like courage at the time. But now, you are allowed to become whole, not just strong, not just surviving, not just capable, whole, healed, soft in the places that were forced to be hard, at rest inside yourself. That is what she looks like. The woman you are becoming. She is her. If this conversation found you today, I believe it was meant to. Subscribe to this channel so we can continue this journey together, because we are only just beginning. Leave a comment below. Tell me, when did you first realize you had to grow up too quickly? You do not have to share the whole story. One word, one season, one moment. You are not alone in this, and neither is the woman reading your comment. I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed and thank you.